You got to stay on. Okay.
I have a thought, Pastor.
Uh-huh.
Uh, in regard to the pandemic, you think of a lot of you know, all the deaths is you can't help but have that on your mind and pray and see the people on television and heart goes out to them. If the light though that I see in all this and pull from it is if you just look at the transformation or the growth that the 11 of us, the 12 of us, and the teachers and you and the teachers and us as a group, as a class, or everybody who calls in, the transformation that we've gone through in the last year. Some of the things we've seen and even some of the calls that sessions we've had with just you and the teachers, I mean, there's been a sort of an evolution, a growth place, as you said, starting off, we're in a different place. And so I'm looking at the light that has happened with us in the 11 months or so that this pandemic has gone about. If you think back at some of the meetings, some of the conversations we've had, and even looking at the growth of not only the teaching, but some of the questions and stuff that comes from other people. So all that's hard to sum up, and that could not or would not have happened if we had not been forced to sit still for a period of time and to kind of let it fuse us into one being. That's all I had.
Okay. I think that the opening of the gateway is the reason that we're able to see what we're seeing now. And I do believe that it is time to bring all of these uncomfortable events to a place of comfort. I do believe that when we begin to understand certain principles, spiritual principles, it will make it a lot easier. For example, Ron, you were raising a question about what happened in the 19th chapter of Genesis with Lot.
Wow.
And one of the things that dawned on me since you raised that is this. Every time in the scriptures that you see where it mentions an angel or a messenger showing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time you see that, that means that person is in a trance or in a sleep, okay? In a state of meditation. Okay. It is a vision every time that happens. And that started with Adam, that entity Adam that had that first vision. The first vision that Adam had was a vision of itself, its makeup, what it consisted of, the type of energy that made it what it is. And that type of energy that made it what it is the energy of feminism and masculinity. And both of those energies are necessary for the production and the sustaining of life itself. And in recognizing that, it sought to become independent of a womb, father, mother. It sought to become independent of that. However, in seeking to become independent of that, what happened is it remained in the vision. And during the course of that vision, it saw the infractions that were being committed by the masculine aspect of itself, and those things those infractions that were being committed were infractions that railed against the desires of the Creator. The created was in a state of rebellion against the Creator, and it brought into the mindset of what was to become humanity a nature of the birthing of rebellion. And when it says that the woman, it is a metaphor for the birthing of rebellion through the womb of feminism, with the seed of masculinity being a catalyst involved in this. And when it talks about the serpent is not something crawling on the ground. The serpent is an aspect of the masculine entity, Adam. It is the aspect of its masculinity, and that masculinity convinced the femininity that it was less than and it should be dominated. All of this is a vision, and this vision continued until it got to a place where there was a need for correction. And the need for correction came in the form of a metaphor saying that the two, the Ish and Esau, the makeup of Adam, was separated from its nutrition, its spiritual place, its spiritual garden, its spiritual environment where it was being nourished. If it continued to be nourished in this spiritual realm as it is growing now, it will never become what it is supposed to be, and that is the pure image of Elohim. Therefore, its nourishment must be cut off until it comes to its senses and it awaken from this subconsciousness so that it can see its real self. And in order for it to do that, some things must take place. It must be separated from the spiritual realm in its mind as it has chosen to be in order for this to happen. So how does it come about that this Adam entity feels as though it is separated and on its own? We must give this entity a body. We must put it in flesh so that it will not remain in a desolate place for the rest of its existence. If we put it in this flesh, then it has this sense of separation, yet it also has the ability to migrate to the place of its origin so it can become what it was created to be, thus becoming one with a room. And in getting it to that place, there are going to be certain things that must happen. And those things that must happen is that there has to be something that's raised up that they can see a difference, that it rather can see a difference in. And the thing that's raised up that it can see difference in is something called Cain and Abel. Cain being indicative of the material mindset of this humanity, and Abel being the spiritual mindset of this same entity. And with these competing mindsets, there has to be a dominant one. And dominant doesn't mean one that rules over, and as it means one that brings this entity to the place where its eyes are open. And so it must make sure that it brings all of those other entities with it. And this is the reason the Creator says, or Elohim says, as I move through the midst of those created, I have to remind them that they are Elohim. They are gods as well. And yet They are living like they are only human. You are God living in human form. And so until you are able to embrace that, you will always struggle for identity. And in the struggle for identity, Cain began to bring into, the Cain attitude rather, began to bring into existence this thing called religion, a thing that connects it to itself and still convinces it that it is connected to the spiritual realm. However, there must be a generation raised up who understands that Cain is not to be the dominant force in terms of how it manipulates the mindset of humanity. There has to be a mindset of Abel, and Abel itself is speaking to breath of spirituality, and in speaking to that, Cain speaks to the idea of possession, and I know the interpretation or translation says that it was named Cain because it was a possession. No, the attitude of possession is Cain. The attitude of spirituality is labeled as Abel. And this attitude of possession lends itself to materialism, and that in Abel rather lends itself to spirituality. And when it speaks of Abel's blood crying out from the ground, it is saying that Abel's blood, the attitude of Abel is crying out because it is in a constant state of death when it comes to the understanding of Cain. In other words, Cain is constantly killing Abel because it is not permitting the attitude of spirituality to rise above what it wants it to be. When it speaks of the offering that was rendered being one of agriculture versus one of the blood, is talking about life. The life is in the blood. That's the blood offering that Abel presented. And Cain is speaking to the idea of the material world of trying to appease its creator. And saying all of that, what we are seeing now is that the idea of Abel, the attitude of Abel is finally beginning to open the eye of the attitude of Cain. And in doing so, it is allowing humanity, rather, not forcing, but allowing humanity to see that there is more than what the eyes are seeing. And when humanity begins to see that, what it begins to see is that it is no longer overshadowed or manipulated or controlled by the false concepts of race, male and female in physical earthly terms. It is one with everything that exists because it brought everything into existence. Now, where are we in regards to all of that? In regards to all of that, we are still at a place where we have exited the garden. Our nourishment is finally coming into view for us. We are bringing humanity to a place where it is approaching the flaming sword, a place of pure thought, a purified state of thought, of mind rather. And a purified state of mind brings us back to the place of our origin. And the place of our origin and nourishment is what is called the garden. And as we look at what's around us now physically, this is simply a manifestation of the chaos in the mind of that entity Adam that has never awakened since it was put to sleep or put in a state of unconsciousness. The awareness is beginning to become prevalent and desirable in the midst of humanity. And that is recognized by the change that everyone appears to be fighting for now. And when I say everyone, I'm not speaking literally every individual, because we are not individuals. I'm talking about everyone with the mindset that unicity with each other has to come before we are able to embrace the unicity that we have with a wound, meaning that we have to love each other with a depth of love that transcends anything that has been perpetrated against us in an adverse manner. And when that takes place, that is when the eye becomes open to the extent that we can understand what Jesus was saying when Jesus said, I and the Father are one. We are the same. We can then understand the Shema when it speaks to the idea of us being the same as our Creator. Any questions about that, or am I making sense, or am I babbling?
Reb, I do have a question for you whenever you get a chance.
Go ahead.
In Jesus' teaching, I and the Father are one. In Jesus' teachings, was he more of an introvert, an extrovert, or an ambivert? Because
about Jesus?
With Jesus and to the teachers on here, I do feel, which is highly opinionated, when Jesus was dealing with the male or the males in his teaching, he was more of an introvert. And an introvert is someone who relies on their own inner thinking. With Mr. George, he talks about the I am greatly, and he maneuvers in the I am greatly. So he, to me, is an introvert. Whenever Jesus dealt with the female, I feel that he was more of an extrovert.
Whoa. Make those distinctions for me. What makes you feel like he was introvert talking to male and extrovert talking to female?
Well, when he was an introvert talking to the male, to me, and what limited I know about reading the Bible, he relied on his own inner king. What's that, Red?
What do you mean by that?
He relied on the things that when Jesus was talking to the man that was going to build a fig tree, Jesus told the man, stop using your own dunch. And that can be translated in different ways.
Go ahead. Yeah.
With the female, I believe he was acting more upon of an extrovert, relying on the energy of others, especially. But I do think Jesus was more of an ambivert. He survived in both kingdoms.
Okay.
With the teachers.
Let me address that for you. Let me address those two before you move on. When it comes to introvert and extrovert, okay? I don't want to get lost in the other parts of the question before I deal with this part, okay? Jesus taught both of them based upon the cultural norms of that society. And when he taught, period, he was teaching always both male and female. Even when he taught the disciples, he was teaching both male and female, because Mary of Magdala and Shalom, all of those, both of those ladies and others traveled with him. The other part of that is there were always females in the mix when he spoke to the multitude. So in regards to a differentiation in introvert versus extrovert, he was the same when he taught all of them. Go ahead. George.
So I had it on mute, my bad. So to the teachers on the phone, what is your teaching style? Is your teaching style comparable with Jesus, that you teach both to the male side and female side? Because, and it's highly opinionated, this society does not care for an introvert of color as it relates to Christianity.
Okay. We don't teach society. We change society.
Okay, though, then.
We don't teach.
Yes, it is.
We change society, and we remind us of who we are. Everything that we teach is already in you. That is the reason it resonates. When we talk about resonates, we talk about being in rhythm with. So the reason it resonates is because you may not understand with your mind what's being said, but your soul does. And that is why it makes sense, even though that's why it resonates with you. As far as those of us who are teachers on this phone, I can readily say that our quote unquote method of teaching is based upon what's needed at that moment. We teach the way we teach based upon what the way it is received. Example of that is this. For as long as I can remember teaching, my approach to teaching or my presentation of what I was teaching changed based upon who I was teaching, and I did not even realize that it was changing until it was pointed out to me. I was teaching differently where I quote unquote pastored than I would when I was someplace else where people were not learning what I was teaching. I taught differently when I was teaching in the association than I did when I was teaching at Foundational Great New Faith without even realizing that it was a difference. So what the bottom line is this. We do not ever decide how we're going to teach. It is not an exercise in an intellectual presentation. It is an experience in spiritual guidance. And that experience in spiritual guidance leans towards our Creator, directing not just what we say, but how we say it, who we say it to, down to the very inflections in our voices when we speak. The reliance on the Creator is something that you cannot wake up one morning and decide you're going to do. It is something that you desire with such a depth until you lose yourself in that desire. And at that point, you become one with the Creator. And in doing so, you are able to see things that you have never been shown in a book or spoken about or spoken to about from anyone else. The things that I have spoken of since we were talking this morning, none of that has been researched. None of that has been given to me by a human voice. And when Barbara gave her explanation this morning, she did not get that from a book. She got that from spiritual experience. And the reason I feel so comfortable speaking the way I am about it, as you have raised the question about the teachers on the phone, and I keep that in quotation, is because we are truly one. And I leave myself open to this. If I have missed it or have misspoken in any way in regards to our approach as teachers, I really, really honestly want you to give me, the teachers I'm talking about, if I missed it, please help me to get it straight. So if you will hold for 1 second, George, I would like for the teachers to respond to this. Did I miss it?
Hi, this is Janice. I don't think you missed it at all. I was thinking about the difference between introvert and extrovert, as George brought up, and how for folks on the call who might not be familiar with those terms, an introvert is typically someone who recharges themselves energetically alone, spending time kind of in thought or concentration. And an extrovert is someone who typically gathers more energy from spending time in a crowd and spending time with others. But and I think George asked asked of the teachers, like if we were introverts or extroverts or ambiverts. And I would say I'm an introvert. This is a society that is not really set up for introverts or quiet introspection. And at times, I have to pretend or put on an extrovert hat. And I might be rambling here a little bit, but the point that I wanted to get to is that I know I'm not alone and that there are other teachers who feel this way. I was not really trying to step forward and say, I want to teach. I got picked and at times even dragged or somewhat kicking and screaming onto the stool to actually teach a lesson. And I think that has something to do with what you said, Pastor, about the fact that, it escapes me. Like the desire that you have for the Creator is kind of what puts you in that spot. It's not a desire to stand up in front of people and say, I know this or I know that, and I can teach you everything, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think the fact that in that reluctance is plays a little bit into that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but when we sit there, we are definitely relying on the Creator. It's not a sort of desire to teach everybody something that, we think we know.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. This is Nick.
As an academic. Go ahead.
If you have a desire to know and to grow in spiritual knowledge and understanding, at some point you will be required to teach, and it's never it should not be, and it isn't in our case, the teachers here, a desire to be seen by people. But if you and we have sort of endeavored to be conduits or vessels for light and enlightenment and awareness, then there will always be a sort of magnetic push and pull to positions where you must share what it is that you know. And I think it usually happens to introverted, quote unquote, people, although we're all both to some extent. And I think, as Pastor, you were saying, we teach to the audience. So we can adapt the method of delivery in accordance to how best the audience would receive it. And that is something that we can be aware of intuitively as we're teaching. And that's not even anything too arcane or difficult to understand. Any teacher in any setting, in elementary school, high school, would over time learn how to best teach to a particular group of people. So it's the same thing when you teach this. Rather, the source of the information and the understanding is more intuitive than it is remembering things that need to be taught, because teaching is also problem solving. You will always be given questions and situations that you had not thought of before, and you will have to learn how to apply your intuitive understanding to that particular situation that is being raised to you. And it comes with experience, but most of all, it comes with an ability to listen to your own intuition and your own self. And when you recognize yourself, or sort of allow yourself to be placed into a particular situation, like when somebody asks you a question or something, it's in part you seeing yourself as them, or seeing yourself as that question. And then in some ways, by imagining yourself as them or experiencing yourself as them, you get the answer to the question as a result of being in that situation. And so that's how you can answer things that you don't know, because you do know. You just don't know that you know until you're in that situation and you listen in the same way that you do in any situation.
And one last thing when
Okay.
Nick
That's really good,
said,
Nick.
you,
Yeah.
sorry. One last thing when
Go
Nick said you do know, going back to when Pastor mentioned resonate earlier, is that you feel that thing and that thing does not feel foreign to you, and all of a sudden you know it intellectually, but it seems so familiar. That is what Nick that is what we're talking about when Nick says you do actually know it, and when Pastor said it resonates and you feel that thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I agree with Nick, what Nick is saying. This is Audrey. The other thing I wanted to say is that I am definitely an introvert. I had to learn to be an extrovert. But in saying that, what I mean is that we all teach from where we are. And there's no other way to teach. We have to teach from where we are and how we understand. But also, in terms of resonance, for me, I do a lot of thinking. And sometimes it's kind of way out there in left field, I think. But when I bring it to this group, I find out that it's not way out there in left field. Like when I was teaching the lesson about the struggle of opposites, it came to me because I was reading a couple of books and there were a lot of ideas that were really resonating with me. And I just realized that those ideas were already in me. And I wanted to sort of bring them out to the group. And I knew, without really knowing, that most of what I was going to do was from the Book of Thomas. And I've never really studied the Book of Thomas. So I had to rely on Sheldon. But I knew that the Book of Thomas was where I was going to get most of the ideas. And I only knew that by the force of being connected to the Creator. That's all I can say. So
It's
I was
very
just
difficult.
teaching from teaching from where I was, but also knowing that in the end, it resonated with other people too.
Yeah, Pastor Richard.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to comment, in terms of our conversation, that my journey from Philadelphia to South Carolina, was really not so much in terms of just, meeting my brother, whom all of you know is James, but it was my desire to seek spiritual truth. And when we talked about today in terms of the gateway, and I keep referring a lot, some of you may know, to 11-11-11, but I'm only sharing that because it has truly brought me into a dimension to really understand my birthright. And in the travels of even going through the birth canal, when we talk about that whole concept, today I'm truly blessed where I'm not trying to speak intellectually, because when I first heard introvert and extrovert, I'm saying to myself, what is that? But my whole point is I know that I'm connected because of the teachings that I'm getting in terms of, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. So I'm searching for oneness. I'm searching for truth. And where I'm at today, again, is a situation where I feel the power of the oneness that we all are. And I just wanted to share those thoughts. I'm done.
Pastor, I wanted to add, this is Kathy. I agree with everything that's been said. And I think, like everyone else, I think most of the teachers started from a point of being introverts, because I don't remember any of us jumping up and down saying, pick me, I want to teach. But then we teach according to who we are. I agree with everything that Audrey said. And one of the things I was going to ask you to back up and speak to for just a moment as well, when you spoke of Adam being put in that state of being asleep and has not been awakened, when I think of it resonating with me, things that we're teaching and how I receive a lesson, I feel like that's me waking up. That is me understanding, coming into a point of awareness of who I am and coming to a point of awareness of why this is resonating with me, because it's true. And for someone who may not understand what you meant by Adam is asleep, could you go back and address that for a moment? Are you there?
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
When I had to get run to teach about how to operate this phone, when I speak of Adam being the entity that was put to sleep, it's spoken of in the scriptures that he was it was put to sleep. And when you look at the Hebrew term for that, it talks about a state of unconsciousness, a state of unawareness. He was unaware of what it consisted of in terms of its creative energy. And it was made when it became aware that a portion of its makeup was feminine in nature in terms of life energy. It is at that point that it said, for this cause, and shall Ish leave Isha? Shall Ish leave a womb and be one with Isha? A man leave father, mother, etc. What he was actually saying is that I realize that I have the same makeup as does the one who created me. And I can function independently of it because of the nature of my not only existence, but the way I'm created. And this was during this state of unawareness as to its true purpose. And in doing so, you will not see where it ever became aware anymore of what it was supposed to be prior to it being put to sleep and realizing its essence. It took its essence and went in a direction with it that it chose to go in, as opposed to embracing its essence and traveling the journey that was charted for it. And that journey that was charted for it is the journey that we are traveling now. The opportunity for it to make that decision speaks more to it having the ability to create and to think, more so than is talking about having been given free will. No, it was created in the essence of the one who created it. Therefore, it had the ability to process in a state of awareness or unawareness. It did not matter. The processing took place. Right now, there are people who are processing in a manner that is contrary to the scriptures, yet you cannot convince them of that. And the reason it is so difficult to convince them of that is because they are processing based upon what they have been manipulated to believe. There are things that deeply embedded in our spiritual DNA, and that is one of them. And in reference to this whole idea of the struggle to awaken from this state of unawareness as to the essence of our being, this has been piled upon by those who have sought to keep us in a state of servitude, pushing us to believe that there is a geographical heaven someplace for us to walk in, and there is a geographical hell someplace for us to burn in throughout eternity. The ones who have taught that are the ones who have the least understanding about anything spiritual. It has no sense of what the entity Adam is. It has no sense of the purpose of Jesus being embodied with truth. It has no sense of anything other than what it takes to function in this material world. Bottom line is this: if I were to make an example of who Cain is in relationship to who Abel is in today's vernacular, then Cain would be the Caucasian mindset and Abel would be the African mindset. Because one is spiritual and the other is material. And Shem would be a compilation of both. So, what am I saying? I am saying that when you really dig into the idea of Cain and his material concepts and Abel and his spiritual concepts, what you will see, spiritual is feminine. It's the feminine aspect of the Creator. Material is a desire to be your own God, to do things your own way. That's what church, that's what religion is, and that's what it perpetuates. Spirituality perpetuates an understanding that in order for us to be who we were created to be, a rebirth has to take place. We must go back to beginning, as Jesus said to Nicodemus, meaning that you must understand the essence of your origin before you can move forward spiritually. I'm not talking about going into your mother's womb. I'm not talking about being baptized in some water. I'm talking about understanding what was from the beginning so that you can see what is now. And when you understand what is now, then you can understand the importance of embracing beginning, because at that point, you are able to move beyond where you are, because your origin tells you your purpose. The true nature of your origin tells you exactly where you are right now. And it also tells you where you are, where you can be. When you see what your origin is and find out where you are, now you know where you need to be. Now, whether or not you embrace that is up to you. That is the reason I say so strongly that when a messenger appears, it is always a vision. That is no different when you said earlier, Kathy, about the message, that your lessons you get or the understandings you get. That is a vision. That does not come from a book. It is a vision. And when you have a dream or a vision, it does not necessarily come in the same way that it does when you're living it with your eyes in this material world. Example: when we look at again that 19th chapter of Genesis, that is a vision, and all kinds of things happen in a vision, and they represent something. The idea of Lot saying that he would give up his daughters. Lot is saying, I would do whatever it takes to protect truth. When he says that my daughters have not been with a man, and then he talks about son-in-laws, what Lot is seeing there is that they have not been defiled. And I will allow them to be defiled rather than to have truth defiled. So it is not so much as giving up a physical daughter as is stating a principle of the depth of a desire you have to maintain the integrity of truth, not just in your life, but in presenting it to other people as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
Not just anyone.
That's-
Help me, somebody.
Yeah, that's also like as a teacher, you always want to make sure you don't fill space with intellectualism, and that's something that you learn how to do. I think that we all learn how to do when we learn how to draw from our intuitive awareness of what truth is. Because if you, in the case of in a religious setting, fill the space with meaningless sort of pageantry and ritual that is not understood and intellectual noise, as opposed to drawing from the reservoir of wisdom that we all have access to, then that is defiling truth. That is polluting the channel or transmission of light from its source into the material realm of experience. And that is what always we must be aware of our own selves enough to not do. And that is the sort of mark of the real search for truth, is the unwillingness to become ensnared by the need to be intellectual or religious in the way that we've been speaking about it, and the constant need to make sure that we're aware of our own intuition and are aware of the true source of what it is that we are speaking about, or where we're speaking from. So yeah.
Okay.
Reb, I got a statement and a question.
Mm-hmm.
And what we know, or what I know, and I'm trying to deliver it to an audience, sometimes people will not understand George William Watson Jr., yet through quicksand, they understand that. And what I mean by that is, to the young men that live in my block, or live on my block, or live in my community, they don't understand anything by way of George William Watson Jr. However, like I say, through quicksand, they understand that, hey, ain't nothing wrong with getting a pension in 30 years instead of trying to get it in 30 days. So my suggestion to the teachers of any magnitude, train on your job, teacher of spirituality, a coach. For example, if I'm one of the young men that Mr. George is trying to aid and get me back on the right path, I may not understand anything about George Richard. Yet Mr. G from Philly, I may understand operating I am, of putting my best foot forward. So in what you know, sometimes people will not receive it by way of Cassie Smith. Sometimes people may not receive it through James Walter Richard or Ron Johnson or Charles. Sometimes in your teaching, you may have to give them a character of you. Everyone is pretty much, I got a character of you. Like Mr. Charles at Greater New Faith, sometimes in my phone I have Big Charles. So in what you know, and you're delivering it to an audience, guess what? They may not see it at Shell. They may see it at Shell to Shell. So when you're teaching something that you know, you may have to remove what they see in the physical and maybe deal with an alter ego. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't help. I will say with me, if you call up to my job and ask to speak to George William Watson Jr., they're going to tell you, who is that? If you call up and say, now please speak the quick thing, they know exactly who it is. So in your teaching, if you really want someone to buy into what you say after you examine your audience, you may have to give them that. I'm not saying it's 100% accurate, nor am I saying it's 100% inaccurate. Yet if you're trying to teach someone something, it may be beneficial to you, and that just depends on the scene, to give them a character of you. You follow what I'm saying, Reverend Richard, or you don't follow, you disagree?
I understand what you're saying, but that is totally different than a spiritual approach to teaching. I don't survey my audience. I don't make any attempt to learn who the audience. That is an impossibility on the telephone, especially. I don't even know what's coming out of my mouth next. I just feel that there is a flow, and I cannot articulate that to the extent that you are able. However, mute your phone, please. Would you mute your phone, please? I don't, as I said, survey an audience. I simply began speaking. This morning, one of the messages that I was hoping to relate in the presence of everyone is that during the course of teaching, we're at a place where it is no longer what? We no longer wait until we hear the message to teach it. We just teach. I had no clue this morning when my mouth started moving that the words about Adam and Sodom and Gomorrah and the words about Cain and Abel were coming out the way that they came out. Even the understanding of the vision that Lot had in relationship to the daughters, I had no clue that was anywhere near me in terms of my mind or my soul, for that matter. So what I'm saying, George, is that I don't have to create characters. I simply open my mouth and it flows. The scripture clearly tells us, take no thought for what you will say, because the Father will give you the words or something of that nature when it's time to speak. So that's what I'm saying. And it's talking about when you stand before the judge. And every time that you teach, you are standing before a judge, because there are decisions made about everything that you say. And if you allow your mouth to move by the hands of the Creator, then what flows from your mouth will be pertinent to the audience that you are speaking to. And you don't have to survey them. I do believe from the depth of my soul that one of the major reasons that we are in this predicament that we are in, where we are on phone lines, Zoom, etc., is because we are not permitted to survey an audience and tailor a message to them. We are not permitted to see expressions. We are not permitted to see body language. We are only permitted to teach. And the things that we are permitted to teach are the things that come straight from the universe. As Barbara was saying, making a statement, and all the teachers bringing pieces into it, that no studying is in that. No research is in that. What's in that is trusting the Creator. Now, there are those who are live in this society who honestly feel, and I'm talking about religion, I'm not talking about the other stuff, those who live in this religious society who feel like when I say something about the teachers or the facilitators, that is a statement of exaltation. It is not. It is a statement of servitude. There is nothing that I say that will exalt a teacher to a place beyond anyone, but it puts every one of us in a place of servitude. And when you are in a place of servitude, you have no right to make a decision about how you're going to serve the children of the Father. The Father makes that decision. I am, and if I may, an example of that would be I am doing the work of someone who owns the company. In that regard, I am a servant who gets a check. So I cannot make a decision about how that company is going to be ran. The decisions that I make about that company is based upon the owner of the company. I am a shepherd. I make decisions based on the owner of the sheep. And every one of us are shepherds. We make decisions based upon the owner of the sheep. And the owner of the sheep, in this particular case, is spiritual. And the sheep are spiritual. And the teacher is spiritual. So everything is spiritual. Therefore, you don't have the space to stand back and say, well, I'm going to talk to this audience this way. And I'm going to make a decision about what I'm going to say based upon how they respond to this particular statement. You don't have that right, neither do you have the space to do that. You simply do what you are experiencing at that moment. And beyond that, George, I don't know how to articulate it any better than that. However, I do appreciate the questions that you're raising, the statements that you're making. Yet I do know that it is imperative for us to release ourselves to the universe so that when we begin talking from this day forward, it is it is being fed from the scrolls of the universe and not from the scrolls of our minds. It is being fed from the spiritual place of nutrition as opposed to some academic setting. It is imperative that we do that. Academic settings only has gotten us to the place where we are in terms of being confused. It is the spiritual settings that has brought us to a place of understanding. The wisdom of the scriptures are hidden in plain sight. And if we don't make every effort to be one with Creator, or be aware of that oneness rather, then it is virtually impossible for us to be able to understand the wisdom of the scriptures, because quite frankly, what you see on the page as translated is not what the scripture is saying. Those are words that hide a mystery. And in the womb of that mystery is the truth. And that truth being birthed must be articulated in a manner that it can be understood, not by the intellectual mind as much as be experienced by the spiritual itself, or the soul itself. So that's where we are at this moment. We have no time to see the politics as politics, or see the brutal killing as a brutal killing. We must see the mystery that's behind that. We must see the wisdom that's behind that. We must see what's taking place and the reason it is taking place. Why is this being exposed now as opposed to having been exposed in the past? This is not a reliving of a type of reconstruction. This is reconstruction. And I use that term reconstruction very loosely, not reconstruction in terms of a governmental society being reconstructed. Reconstruction in that we are reconstructing our vision, the ways that we ponder, the ways that we process what's in front of our eyes. And that type of reconstruction comes from seeing with the eye. So what happens is we see it with our eyes, and our eye is what processes and translates it to us so that we can understand not only where we are on this journey, but also where we are headed. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
It does. And may I add one thing, Pastor?
Yeah.
On the heels of everything you said, because it's spot on, of course. Desire and intent play a role in that too. And I wanted to speak to that for just a moment. As teachers, our intentions are always to bring truth, and that the student will see who he or she is or who they are spiritually. not he or she necessarily, but I'm saying individual people will see who they are. But then there's a second part of this equation, the desire of that student. Even if it doesn't resonate with you from the beginning when you hear it, you have to ask yourself a question. Do I trust those who are bringing me truth? If I trust the teacher to really be giving me what I need and bringing truth to me, then I have to say, okay, that lesson was taught, but it doesn't resonate with me right now. I'm not getting it yet. Do what I call it, you make a decision, but I trust that it's true. And I'm going to, what I call, sit with it. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to mold it over. I'm going to write questions. I'm going to raise questions in my own mind. I will bring those questions back to the teachers. At some point, I began to realize in all of that, through my desire to really understand truth, because we don't teach with you just as an audience sitting there with no role. Your role is to have that desire to want to learn and to trust what you're being taught and to hold on to that truth. So as a result of that, that's when the mystery of the gospel is revealed to you through your desire to want to know. The words begin to just no longer, it's just words written on a page. It begins to transcend what is written on that page and take you to a place of spiritual truth. Once you get to that place of spiritual truth, you begin to recognize that, like George says, I am the I am. I begin to see who I am. But if I just sit there and say, okay, well, that was taught today and I got nothing from that, I don't really get it, and I leave it right there, then as a student, I've deprived myself of the next level, of the next step in understanding, because even in a secular setting in the classroom, if I've taught and the student didn't learn, then did I really teach? That's always been my premise and my approach to teaching. But I recognize that you may not understand everything that was taught. Your homework, or so to speak, if I'm going to speak from the secular vernacular for a moment, is to desire to sit with that lesson, to have questions, to bring it back. You have a role in this to get that understanding. You just don't start with, well, it was taught today and I didn't get it. And if you desire it, you will get it. And I'm going to say it the way Ron says it sometimes. The thing that you're seeking will apprehend you. And so you've got to stop and think about, what is my role as a student? If I'm calling in every Saturday, every Sunday, and every Monday, I have expectations, and my expectations are to learn, to see who I am. And as a result of that, when I began to approach it from, I have a role too, and that role is for me to understand that I have to have the desire to want to see spiritual truth. When I get to that point, then things begin to open up. And I just wanted to add that on the heels of what you were saying.
Oh, thank you. What came to mind as you were speaking is that one of the reasons it is, I think, that it's been so difficult for us to embrace what we just talked about in terms of simply waiting, absorbing rather, what the Creator desires for us to teach, is because we have such a high standard of making sure we're right. People have been taught what someone thought they ought to be taught, as opposed to what the Scripture is saying. We have been taught what seminarians said the truth is. Theology is what some man says the Scriptures are. Spirituality is what the Scriptures really are saying. And for too long, we have embraced theology as opposed to embracing reality. And the struggle is to help people see that a transition must take place. And that transition must be moving from an intellectual discussion to a spiritual experience. And that cannot always be articulated, but it definitely is recognizable when it takes place. It doesn't matter how steep you are or how steep we are in academics. What matters is how deep our desire is to understand who we are. The idea of philosophers saying that one in particular talks about not believing in a divine creator, but yet having an epiphany and saying there must be a divine creator. There must be something greater than me. I think, therefore I am. And if I think, there has to be something that causes me to think. That is an example, hopefully, of moving from a earthly consciousness an earthly academic awareness of being, of life itself, to a spiritual understanding of the reality of life. And knowing that life never, ever ends, and life cannot be cornered off and separated from everything else. Life always exists. The question is, how do we view it and how we navigate it? And again, I'm not talking so much about those who are not religious or seeking or involved in religions. If we navigate life based upon what we get from religion, then we are also navigating life as though it is a business proposition. And the navigation of life is never a business proposition. The navigation of life is always an experience wrapped in a desire that all of humanity come to a place of sin, that not only is it balanced, but it is the same. It is one. There is no difference in the spiritual essence of any of us. The thing that appears to make it different is how we navigate that essence. How do we perceive it? How do we wrap our minds around what we are being told as opposed to wrapping our minds around our experiences? There is a difference in resonance when you are in a religious setting and in resonance when you are in a setting of being taught. In religion, it is not a resonance that's being experienced. It is a good feeling. Resonance is different. I cannot explain to you the difference in the feelings, but I know the difference. And the reason I know the difference is because I have experienced both. Excuse me. And if you have been in a religious setting, so have you. Something that resonates with you sticks with you. Something that resonates with you brings thought to your mind, causes you to ponder it. Things that make you feel good and have a good experience leaves you empty tomorrow after the experience has subsided. Things that resonate with you will be with you tomorrow with you still pondering them. And that only happens if you have a genuine desire to embrace the spiritual nature of who you are. If you are listening because you want to be excited or because you want to experience have an intellectual expanse, you are going to receive differently because your expectation is to be intellectually stronger. You might know that something different has been said that you've not heard before, but it will not change your life. And it will be difficult for you to hold on to it. If your desire is to be open so that the spiritual essence of truth can be awakened in you, then that's what will take place. And your experience with it will be long-lasting and life-changing. Religion does not do that. And that is the reason that the that religion is so programmatic. It has to change the direction of programs with the times in order to keep people interested. The truth of what's being taught does not have to fight to keep you interested. It doesn't do that. It doesn't force you to be interested. The interesting part about truth is this: if you desire it, then you will experience it. If you don't desire it, if you're on this line just to just to learn something academically, you will never have this experience of truth. You will not experience what resonates because you will mislabel it. Maybe one of the first steps, not maybe it is, the first step is to stop labeling anything and experience everything. I remember very clearly having read the Quran and then entering the ecclesiastical settings of Christianity and being told that it is a sin to read the Quran. That never made sense to me. However, it did make sense to a lot of people, even to those who were teaching it. Because what I have experienced is this: ecclesiastical leadership is lazy. It is too lazy to find out the truth about what it teaches, but it is not lazy when it comes to moving into positions of prestige and increasing income. It is not lazy when it comes to being popular, learning how to hoop, learning how to do things that's going to move it into a place of notoriety. It's not lazy then. But it is extremely lazy when it comes to making every effort to understand what it teaches. All it wants to do is give you a good time, get the check, and keep it moving, and wait on you to get to heaven so you can shake Jesus' hand after Peter let you through the gates. That is laziness. That is ecclesiastical malpractice. That is robbery in itself. Robbing you of an opportunity to see who you are. Robbing you while telling you that they have your best interests at heart. No, you are being robbed of an opportunity to sleep good at night. You're robbed of an opportunity to be to interact with all manner of men without carrying a chip on your shoulder or anger in your heart. When you embrace and experience the essence of who you are, the angst that you get when you are approached by adversaries is not there anymore. The desire to be overbearing is not there anymore. Your only desire is to serve. That's it. As Nick said much earlier, there is no desire to be seen, but there is a desire to see everything. And that is a vast difference. We see everything, then we understand what it means when it says that the spiritual man knows all things. In other words, the spiritual man is intimate with everything that is. And when it says the spiritual Adam is intimate with everything that is. And that intimacy gives you the opportunity to bring to birth everything that's needed spiritually for humanity to love each other as it loves itself. And if you don't love yourself, then you need to speak with someone, and so you can understand the reason you don't love yourself, so you can be brought to a place of loving yourself. Because in order for you to love someone else, you must love yourself. And if you don't love those who you see every day, you do not love Elohim. That's not James Richard, that's the scriptures. And the context of all of that is this: you must love your fellow man. And that is not talking about having a good feeling about them. It's easy to love those who love you. It's easy to love those who look out for you. It's easy to love those who have your back. But the question is, do you love those who don't? Do you love those who approach you as an adversary? Do you love those in your household? It's not what you say, it's how you express it. If I'm in this household and I tell you I love those in my household, then I don't forsake them simply because I don't like what they do or say. I might not agree with what they do or say, but I don't forsake them. And if I forsake them, then how can I convince you that I'm there for you no matter what? If I cannot embrace my household in that manner, then everything else I am doing is altruistic, not spiritual. And there are those who are altruistic and racist. There are those who are altruistic and will not deal with anyone who does not have a quote-unquote degree. There are those who are altruistic and will not associate with people who have less economic standing than they do. So altruism is not equivalent to spirituality. And we must be able to know the difference in that, so that we are able to traverse this ball called earth, live in this realm of earth existence, while at the same time being of that realm of spirituality, the spiritual reality of who we are. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I had a few comments.
Go ahead.
It's kind of a combination of everything that has been talked about today. And I guess I'll start with what Kathy was talking about, intention and desire. I can relate to a lot of the teachers when the teachers say that they absolutely had no intentions of teaching or wanted to. When I first started going to Foundation, I was extremely happy just sitting in the corner saying absolutely nothing. Maybe every now and then asking one question, but just absorbing everything. And my whole, of course, intention and my entire desire for the word we've been using today was to know who I am and willing to put anything aside that I thought for, I don't want to say the goal, but that was my deepest desire more than anything, to know and understand who I am, to walk into that and willing to put anything that came before aside for that. And all of a sudden when it came up for the idea of me teaching, of course, I absolutely did not want to do that. However, I was also at a place, Sheldon individuals still didn't want to do it, but it is that desire that we start to get to not only know who and what we are, but also to want everyone else to know and understand who they are as well. When George in Philadelphia talks about I am, George is not just talking about himself, or he's just not walking around saying that he knows who he is and he wants to know who he is. George desires for everyone to know who they are. George sees that within those people, even when they don't see it in themselves. This idea that when you come to reaching people, the hardest person that it is to reach, no matter what their background is, where they may have gone through or whatever, in terms of an intellectual standpoint, they could care less how much of an expert you are on any particular thing. what resonates means the most to them is when you actually care and they can actually feel that. Then all of a sudden they are more so willing to hear what you have to say, listen, etc., where before they would not let you in at all. When we have that intention, more so speaking on the teachers, or at least for, well, also with myself, when I'm speaking to an individual, I'm not just talking to them, or at least that's not my intention or desire. And it's not even in my head that I've just set that intention in my head consciously, but I am trying to communicate and speak to the deeper part of their heart, the deeper part of their soul. If they have the desire and the opportunity, they too can hear that particular thing. Hence comes that resonation that we talked about, because I'm speaking to the I am with them, and they can hear it, they can see it, if they're open to do so. So that part is important. We talk about the teaching style, and when Pastor talked about what's been happening the past few weeks or months, et cetera, in terms of everyone teaching. To be frank, I don't actually go and look at some of the stuff when we're talking about it until it's actually brought up in that lesson. And it's only because of a deep intention and desire for everyone to understand and hear it, that all of that stuff comes out, where I'm quite amazed myself. If I've just gone to do that an hour ahead of time without thinking of others understanding, or being able to speak in a way that others could understand, or if I was just do it outside of that for my own edification and understanding, none of that would come. It's no way possible that I would see those things. And so I've heard it talked about not knowing where this information or how we say what we say. It is because it's driven from that intention that no matter what, as much, my deepest desire is to know and understand who I am, as well as whomever else may be listening on the line. And from that, the words that are necessary comes out of our mouths, or comes out of our mouths collectively, for those who have a desire to take something away and to grow and understand themselves more. But I personally can just also to answer that question at the very beginning, I can't tell you what I said before. I was thinking about it as Pastor was talking. I can't even tell you what verses we were in. I know we were like, I kind of have a loose feeling of the books, but other than that, I can't tell you. It's just more so that intention and desire, and that intention and the desire that Kathy mentioned pretty much drives everything. But I can say this collectively for the Teachers Conference, our deepest desire is to know who we are, and for everyone else to know who they are as well, and to see that in individuals. We come, and I'm sure everyone comes in contact with individuals, because you can't be a part of this and not have this experience where you come in contact with people and you can see sometimes more in them than they see in themselves. And our desire is for them to have an intimate relationship and see that within themselves as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone else? Let me say this. Today, I think that if nothing else, we have helped not only each other, but everyone else to understand the journey, the discipline, as well as sometimes what we term the agony of teaching to be. It's not easy because we are so accustomed to being what we call prepared, not realizing that we're always prepared. We talked about conceptually teaching, And right now we are beginning to experience the ultimate teaching of concepts without having outlines and notes and that kind of thing. Simply bringing it and discussing the concept. For example, Kathy's been talking about understanding the door and what it really means. At some point, it's going to come, and conceptually, we'll discuss that and get an understanding of what that is, and so that we will be more clear on how to move between worlds. We do it now, but we don't realize it, and understand what that truly means. The idea that Ron trying to want to understand or walk through that door that was opened in Sodom and Gomorrah, and understanding the concepts there, the ideas that are the principles that are embedded in these scriptural stories that we have to see differently now, are the things that are going to be revealed to us. The understanding that Abraham, if you read it clearly, he was never awakened either. When the covenant was entered into, and the animals were cut in half, and with the exception of the turtle dove, there was no awakening there. So, is that the same type of subconscious sleep that Adam was in? I really don't think it is, but that in itself is another discussion. So I know that there have been expressions of understanding the nature of teaching that we have never seen before. I'm thankful. I thank George for raising the questions and making the comments about the concepts of teaching that help all of us to understand the nature of what a teacher is, and not only is, but what you endure by virtue of teaching. And when I talk about agony, I'm not talking about agony in a negative way. I'm talking about the agony of making every effort to know that what we are saying is in line with the universe, as opposed to some religious dogma. That in itself is a type of welcomed agony. Any questions? Any comments? I do want, and let me say this very quickly. Those of you who are on this line who are not facilitators / teachers, whatever, those of you who are on this line, this does not mean that you don't raise questions. This does not mean that you don't have input, because at some juncture, every one of us is a teacher. And all teachers must raise questions. All teachers get answers by raising questions. And every one of us is a student. When Sheldon is speaking, every one of us is a student. When someone else is speaking, everyone is a student. You cannot live in this earth realm without being a student teacher. You are going to teach something, and you're going to learn something. The question is, are you learning what you desire, or are you learning what you have been given by virtue of being born in a certain family environment? But you are going to learn something, and you are going to teach something. So to those of you who are not facilitators in this respect or regard of facilitating, I would like to hear from you and get some feedback as to how you, what you have heard in regards to today's discussion. whether it be about the teaching or about the presentation in regards to Adam, that entity, and Cain and Abel, etc. I would like to get some feedback from you.
Speak up, Linda.
Who's speaking? Hello?
He's saying who's speaking.
We can't hear.
We can't hear.
Well, this is oh, okay.
Huh?
This is Richard. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I don't know quite what's happening electronically, technically. But to answer your question, to be honest, you asked it. I found what you've discussed. In fact, I wish you could almost go back over the beginning a little more, because I found what you all have been discussing today much more, it resonated more personally with me, brought me back to thinking a certain way, feeling a certain way, more so than in the last couple of weeks, to be honest. And then I guess I was particularly intrigued, I don't know what word to use, touched by your talking earlier, beginning earlier and discussing Cain, Abel and all that, because that whole notion of duality, etc., and the imagery that creates, I guess it's the imagery is very, for me, very powerful, and something that I can carry through the day. If you know what I'm trying to say, so it's more than just words, it's the imagery of it. Then I don't need all the words. I just have a notion of how things relate. And you're not saying something we haven't said over the years, but it just felt particularly, it resonated particularly well with me today. So, but yeah, I guess I don't say much, because I feel like in the last years with Foundation, I've said too much. Just drawing attention to my own whatever, and I'm tired of that. So it's not that I'm not listening or trying to feel what's being said. It's just I don't know who else is on the line. I don't know where they are in their understandings. And I guess I'm reluctant to seem to overpower or misdirect some of the conversation. So I'm quiet, which is a new something for me.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Pastor. This is Linda. What I was thinking is about the teachers, that when you talked about the 13, that 13 to me equals one. We are all one together. And anytime that someone has a lesson, it's like the branches. We're all those branches, but we come together as one. And so anytime I've noticed that whatever lesson that anybody has, all the teachers can have an input. They can put an input in. And it's not just because you sit and study in a book, but it's what's inside of you that's resonating. And we can all come together and teach as one, as a unit.
Thank you, ma'am. I know that
We have someone else who wanted to speak too, if you were still listening. I mean, I don't want to stop you, but I'm just saying if you were still asking for those to speak up.
I am, especially those who are not facilitators. Yes.
This is Regina. This is Regina, and I guess like for someone who connected years ago, disconnected, and I'm in the process of rejoining, re-listening, and regathering, today really hit differently than the past couple of weeks that I've been listening to, because I heard from the teachers what I know I experienced sitting in that space. Just the openness and the stillness that comes when you don't know what's going to be drawn out of you to bring to the body gathered there, right? And so I really heard that today and just wanted to speak on that.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay. The reason I raised that is because I want to see where we are in terms of how you have received what we talked about today, because this is the direction, this is the journey, the segment of the journey rather that we're traveling now, and the results of this journey will be manifested quickly. So I ask you to make sure that you are more observant than ever about your surroundings. And the surroundings of which I speak is not just your physical surroundings. I'm talking about your spiritual environment as well, your thoughts, your dreams, your feelings, your experiences, those things. So don't take anything as being simply for you, because everything is for all of us. It is impossible for us to be one and not have everything being for all of us. So when we go through things, it is for the benefit of humanity, and whether it's beneficial or not is predicated on how we go through it, how we deal with it. And in going through something, please keep this in mind always. Going through, not staying in. It's always going through, okay? Are there any questions or comments at this moment?
Yes, this is Angela. I have a comment and a question. I just wanted to say to all the teachers that do teach on the line that and I'm pretty sure everyone on there does, I trust that what they're teaching, what they're giving us is sincere and true. So I might not ask a lot of questions because I'm still trying to wrap my mind or just letting it digest within me, but I do trust what is given to me, and I try to get on when I can to listen on Saturdays and Sunday, and I'm only on Monday, so I do have a desire to be taught. And another the question I wanted to raise is, can you talk a little bit more about the nakedness of Adam and Eve?
Yes. That from it's a whole lesson in itself, unless someone else wants to address it now. Because when you say, "Do you want to?" it's not just James Richards being addressed.
Yeah, I can just briefly.
Okay.
And thank you for the question. But nakedness refers to not having put on any, or not have accumulated, or not having put on any preconceived notions or ideas or concepts of our own creation in our ignorance that are not reflective of the true nature of things. So in other words, it's like when you are naked in the symbolic sense, you have removed all the things that are artificial from your awareness, from your internal self, a relationship with yourself. so that you can be truly exposed to the reality of what is, and therefore receive it in a most sort of innocent and pure form. And generally, when you see that sort of symbolism of clothing in the Bible, it's related to that, like the ideas, concepts, mentalities, etc., that we take on as a result of going through life, that we can examine and make a judgment as to whether they are beneficial for our spiritual growth and understanding or not. And in the case when they are not, we can take off those clothes. We can remove those things that are artificial and hindering our own sort of progress along the path of knowing the self and growing in our connection to spirit and the creator. So does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Well,
Thanks,
well,
Nick.
I was just going to piggyback on what Nick said. Sorry, I got this thing in my mouth because I've been grinding my teeth. Wonder why. Anyway, yeah, it's that old folk thing about the clothes make the man or woman. And wearing clothes, of course, is the normal, sensible thing to do to protect your body, etc. And wanting to look nice, nothing wrong with that. But then look what our social media has taken us to, the place it's taken us to, and what it's worshipped, if you want, and sucked people into. And you get the sense of how wearing the clothes is one thing, and having the clothes wear you, I guess is the way to say it, or you're being possessed by all of that and what you think that creates. That's where maybe a lot of the confusion is. But yeah, otherwise, we have a personality, an ego-based sense of who we are. We've constructed that. We present that to the world. But the question is whether, when you look in the mirror, you see something more profound behind that, or all of what you think you are is what you see in the mirror.
Only other thing I was going to add was those insecurities that, I mean, the idea of, being naked and needing to then clothe yourself are insecurities, or seeing the self as being less than what it is, and then therefore needing to put up wall or some type of boundaries to have a sense of protection. But the only reason that sense of protection is there anyway, once again, is because of the insecurities or feeling less than. So the nakedness is being able to more so freely accept who and what we are to the truest nature.
And I'll add one more thing. That's why it says in the Gospel of Thomas, when the disciples asked, I believe they asked, when will we see you, or when will we know who you are, or when will we be like you? And his response, or the response was, when you remove your clothing and trample them under your feet as little children. And it's also related to that.
Yeah, which means having the comfort to do that with the trampling, not just taking the clothes off and being terrified and in horror, but to shamelessly and comfortably do that. Yes.
Yeah. And also when David danced naked, if you remember that from the Bible, but also related.
Yeah, so we're not telling anyone to go get an indecent exposure charge.
That's why there are camps for that. They're called nudist camps. And in a way, why are people attracted to that? Because they want to take the clothes off and be free, be more themselves. So
Yeah, and that's why it's coming out of European religion is where you get shame for your physical body. Because shame for your natural physical body is not, and it's not that we all have to be naked all the time, but because clothes are obviously useful, but the idea of being ashamed for your physical body, that is not compatible. That is not a spiritually sourced idea or feeling.
Not at all. Guys, I'm going to thank you for participation by virtue of your comments, questions, and presence. However,
Pastor,
go ahead.
hey, can I just say one thing before you go? I wanted to try to get in closer to your comment, but a question came. You said that you talked about our going through things, and the thing that I have come to a point of saying is I'm growing through it, because my expectation is that when something presents itself to me, it's a lesson for me. It's for me to take something out of that, and so going through seems a little bit more passive than growing through, which means that I have responsibility for how I deal with or what I do with whatever is presented to me. If that resonates, I have the responsibility to pull light out. I have the responsibility to see that even though I think this is a disaster, there is some light in this. There is something in this for me to know so that I can share it with somebody else. So I don't think of the concept of going through something anymore. I think of the concept of growing through, of growing in, or that kind of thing.
But yes, that makes more sense. And actually, I agree wholeheartedly, because you're right. It does sound passive to go through it, like, oh, when really it's not that at all. So, is there anyone? Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Nick and Sheldon, and all of you. Excuse me. I look forward to you guys being on tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and we'll see where the journey carries us tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and we'll see you on the phones tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a
Bye,
good
Nick,
day.
Sheldon.
Bye, fam.